What's up, guys? Welcome to the 6th episode of the Intersect project. Today's episode will cover Chuck versus the Sandworm. And before I go on my cavalcade of thank yous to the people who listen to this, I want to explain what a sandworm is. Now, for those Chucksters out there that are listening to this, and newbies might know this too, if you have ever watched the movie Dune or read the book Dune, you know that a sandworm is a creature from that universe that is a very dangerous creature. It's deadly. But a little knowledge for you guys if you didn't know. Also, I would suggest reading Dune. It's a very good book. And watching the movie. It's kind of become a cult classic. Kind of sucked back in the day, evidently, but it's becoming a cult classic. I believe in it. So I would suggest reading the book, but you can also watch the movie. Next, like I said, I'm gonna go on a cavalcade of thanking. I'd like to thank everybody who has listened to this podcast so far. Thanks to the people who've shared it, and thank you to future people who listen to this podcast, because some people might not listen till like episode 8. Hopefully everybody listens, though, because it's a good podcast, in my opinion. But I am the one running it, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But anyway, I'd like to thank Chuckaholics.com, everybody over there, for showing me support. Go check them out. Got a lot of great articles, creating a Chuck family for you guys. And I'd like to thank that's about all I have to think right now. So let's just dive right into this episode, guys. Here we go. Okay, guys, before we jump straight into Chuck versus the Sandworm, I want to talk to you guys a little bit. I want to thank you guys. I tweeted just yesterday, because this podcast should be coming out on Friday. I recently checked the statistics on this podcast, and in the past 5 days, the viewership has skyrocketed for this podcast, like almost probably doubled what it had the first few episodes. So thank you guys. And you guys are getting 2 episodes this week because you guys deserve it. You guys are the best. Keep it up. Because I ain't stopping here. This choo-choo train ain't a stopping and pulling into station. We're keeping it going. We're going to make it on top of that mountain. We're going to get this podcast to the top. To the top. So let's get that going. So I just wanted to say thank you guys, and like I said, I'm going to release 2 podcasts this week. I'm going to release this one, Chuck versus the Sandworm. Well, if you're listening to this, I've released it already, but this should go up on Friday, the 12th of September, and then I will record another one, and the next episode should go up, which I'm pretty sure is Chuck versus the Truth. Don't hold me to that, but I'm almost positive it's Chuck versus the Truth. But this Chuck versus the Truth is coming up, and it is that the next episode 7, will be on. I'll record it and I'll release it probably on Sunday or Monday. So you guys get 2 episodes this week because you guys are the best, like I said. So now that I've fully unveiled my release schedule for this week, I am going to start in on Chuck versus the Sandworm. Chuck versus the Sandworm. Here we go, guys. We've reached the 6th episode of season 1 for Chuck. This is a pretty good episode. I like it. It's not really, I guess, okay, in season 1, a lot of the episodes aren't really filler episodes because you're trying to establish the backstory and the whole arc of the show in season 1, so people will come back for season 2, which they almost didn't, but that's besides the point, because they made it. They made season 5. But so there's not a lot of filler episodes, so there's a lot of pretty good episodes in this first season. I mean, they're all good, because, like I said, this is my favorite TV show. Wouldn't be doing a podcast about it if it wasn't. But this is not a filler episode, I'll say that. It is a filler bad guy, though. I'm not I'll go into that when I start talking about Laszlo, but he's more of a filler bad guy in my opinion, at least. So first off, usually I start off in when I start talking about the episode during the podcast, I start at the beginning. This time I want to talk about a certain thing that I noticed that I caught. This is my third rewatch, and I never noticed it before. But Vic Sahay, who plays Lester Barnes on, or no, that's Jeffrey Barnes. Lester Patel, sorry, on Lester on Chuck, is every Sunday on Twitter. By the way, go follow him at Vic Sahay. I think there's an underscore between Vic and Sahay, but go follow him on Twitter. I'm trying to get his followers up because he is a wonderful person who interacts with people on Twitter all the time. And if you're on Twitter and you're not following the whole cast, what are you doing? Go follow the whole cast. They're all wonderful people. But anyway, every Sunday, Vic Sahay does this thing called Shakespeare Sunday, where he tweets out a line, not a line necessarily, but I wouldn't even say a verse, but you might, yeah, a verse, whatever, a verse from a Shakespearean play or work, and he tries to get everybody to break it down and explain its meaning, and he interacts with the fans while doing this. It's a great thing because, I mean, one, Shakespeare is a freaking genius. He's brilliant. And two, it shows that he's willing to interact with huge fans. And so I think that's really cool. But in this episode, I noticed that he quotes Shakespeare, and I found that really funny because I've been not necessarily participating because I'm not very good at Shakespeare, but I do enjoy Shakespearean works. I'm just not very good at ye old English. But I noticed this as he was talking. He goes, "Heavy is the head that wears the crown." And I thought I recognized that from a Shakespearean work somewhere. Turns out it's a line from Shakespeare's Henry IV, play Henry IV. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And I'm like, boom, got that. Got you. I know exactly what you're laying down. I'm picking up what you're putting down. So that's just something I wanted to start out this episode discussion with because I thought that was cool. That's just me. Maybe it's just me, but I like it. So back to the beginning of the episode. We're going to talk about the shenanigans of the Buy More. This week's shenanigans, Mystery Crisper. And if you didn't understand Mystery Crisper when you watched it, basically he just eats terribly rotten, spoiled food from the crisper. They leave their food in there. It goes bad. Weeks later, he opens it up and he tries to eat it because it's a shenanigan. I don't know. It's a game, and he has to prove that he's better. I don't know. It's funny. So it was a good way to start the episode, in my opinion. And it's one of the, not one of the, I don't know. It could be one of the better office shenanigans. Buy more shenanigans, but it's a good one. It's a good buy more shenanigans, like last week's frightened raccoon. But anyway, so I just wanted a little note on Mystery Crisper. I thought that was funny. So now we're going to talk about, I'm just going to let you guys know that I'm going to cover some of the smaller topics first before we delve into the bigger topics. So now we're going to talk about Chuck and Sarah faking it. And by it, I mean sexual intercourse. Relations of a sexual nature. And Chuck that's something, if you can imagine, that's something hard to fake when you're in a pretend relationship. So I applaud them. What they do is, well, they just sit there and play music. Sorry, I had to get a drink of water. But I love when she goes, "Well, how long should I stay?" And Chuck goes, "Well, 42 minutes, 15 seconds, because Arcade Fire's album such and such is a natural aphrodisiac. I don't know why I found that so funny, but that is hilarious. So I thought that was funny, and the whole part about them having to fake having sex made it funny to me. While we're on the topic of Chuck and Sarah faking it, or while we're on the topic of Chuck and Sarah, the distrust theme comes back a little bit when Laszlo's like, "Hey, there's check everywhere. There's probably bugs everywhere in your apartment." Well, he's right, but Chuck thinks they're just out there to spy on his privacy. They don't want him. They don't want him. I guess they just don't want. He thinks they don't want him doing anything he shouldn't. When really they're trying to protect him. He's a super government asset, and I guess it's still taking him some time to realize that he is so important. They have to keep eyes on him 24/7. Like, it's not something they necessarily want to do. It's something they have to do for the national security reasons. And I just don't think he's fully wrapped his head around that yet. So now that we go back, we're moving from the distrust coming back to the first beginnings of Casey's third wheel feelings. And for Chucksters, veteran Chucksters, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Casey's third wheel feelings. For you newbies, this shows up a lot. He definitely feels like a third wheel a lot in this series. And I mean, to his credit, I mean, he's not necessarily wrong. He is an invaluable member of Team Bartowski. Without him, they're not Team Bartowski. They're just a couple of spies don't know what they're doing. Casey is an very integral part of that team, and he sometimes feels left out. Sometimes feels left out. Sometimes that's the best I can do, guys. That's the best. I'm a wordsmith. Yeah, I definitely should be taking part in Shakespeare Sunday based on my wordsmith. But that's besides the point. Anyway, so Casey's third wheel feelings play not a huge part in the series, but it's not something that he takes lightly, and it's not something that the show takes lightly either. So that's nice. Now, let's talk about the assistant manager job. Man, Chuck versus Harry Tang. And I don't know if anybody's noticed. I'm sure everybody has. Harry Tang is a play on words. I'm not going to go into it because it's kind of vulgar, but I think you can figure it out. And I like that they mess around, and they made that a running joke for a whole season. So sue me if you find that offensive that I find it funny, but I find that play on words hilarious. Don't actually sue me, but I mean, I guess you can take offense to it, but I mean, it's kind of funny. Gotta admit, it's kind of funny. Anyway, it's Chuck versus Harry Tang, and obviously Chuck's the front runner. I mean, he's more likable. Obviously, Harry Tang's like a sack of potatoes. No one likes him, not at all. Nobody wants him to be assistant manager except for him, and it shows. Everybody would much rather have Chuck as the assistant manager. But what comes in between Chuck and the assistant manager job? The same thing that comes between Chuck and his family, Chuck and his friends, Chuck and his real life, is spy life. The only thing that can tear him down when he's feeling up. So, like I said, him having to choose the spy life, not voluntarily, by the way, him having to choose the spy life over his personal life is like the major theme of the first few seasons. So get ready for that, newbies. Veteran Chucksters know exactly what I'm talking about, because veteran Chucksters, as you newbies will learn watching this, you don't just finish watching Chuck and move on. You rewatch and you rewatch. Like I said, I'm on my third rewatch. and I'm just now doing this podcast. You're going to want to rewatch it. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like I said, that Chuck not having any choice of choosing his spy life over his personal life it's pretty big in this show. Also, this week we get another introduction to bomb disfusal. Chuck is very good at bomb defusal. I'll leave it at that. He's very good at bomb defusal. He's like super good. Like I don't want to say Rain Man good, because that's not nice to say. But I mean, he's just got like a knack for solving bomb for bomb defusal. It's crazy. It's totally crazy. And okay, so that about does it for the small topics before we delve into the bigger topics of the episode. So now we're going to move on to my favorite segment, Hit of the Week. And if you're just joining us for the if this is your first podcast, I encourage you to go back and listen to the other ones and watch episodes 1 through 6 of both Chuck and this podcast. I would go back and listen. I would not start with this one. But at this point, you're 16 something minutes in. Finish it. Finish it out, man. Finish it out. But anyway, for those of you just joining us, Hit of the Week is a segment where I choose my favorite hit by one of Team Bartowski, or really just anybody in the episode, as you're going to learn from this Hit of the Week. The best knockout punch or something along those lines. This week, we have our first bad guy winning Hit of the Week. Wasn't a lot of hitting going on in this episode, so very slim pickings. But I chose this week Laszlo for who got the Hit of the Week. He had the best hit when he hit his handler with the laptop. I mean, it was a good blow. Bam. You could see the laceration on his face later on in the episode. It was a bad hit. It was a good one. So, Laszlo, surprisingly, a bad guy, has won Hit of the Week. Laszlo wins this round. But so our scoreboard is currently John Casey 2, Sarah Walker 1, and Laszlo 1. Because I have the first 2 episodes I did not do Hit of the Week segment. I introduced it in the 3rd episode. So we're on the 4th episode. We're on the 4th segment of Hit of the Week. So that's why the scoring is like that. And Laszlo, this is not really. It's not a spoiler alert at all. So Laszlo is a 1 episode baddie, and he's not one of my favorite 1 episode baddies. He's not up there. So I have no problem not keeping his score, because he's going to have 1, and that's it. And so, Laszlo, congratulations. You've won Chuck vs. the Sandworms Hit of the Week. Do-do-do-doom. Hit of the Week. Yeah! I do sound effects with my mouth, because if that sounded terrible, now you know why. So, now that we've covered all the small topics and Hit of the Week, I'm going to move on to the big topics, specifically 2, both involving Morgan. The smaller of the 2 big ones. Actually, I have to go in order on these ones. This one feels better discussing when I go in order on these 2. We have Morgan and Chuck's big fight. Now, if you're new to the series, I'm sure by now you can tell, Chuck and Morgan are more than best friends. They're basically brothers. They've been best friends since when they were kids. So, I mean, they're definitely more than just friends, best friends. They're like brothers to each other. So, we all know that we can fight with our brothers and our siblings. Big time. Some of the biggest arguments we have is with our siblings. And sometimes we have to tell our siblings like it is. And sometimes we step over the line when we try to tell our siblings how it is. Sometimes we get way too harsh. This is an example of stepping a bit over the line by Chuck. Now, what he said, 100% true. Yes, Morgan is so immature. I mean, Chuck's a little immature too, though. I mean, he's got to realize he's also a little bit immature. But yeah, he's not wrong. Morgan is immature. He's not trying to make something of his life. I mean, he's probably only at the Buy More because Chuck took a job at the Buy More. So, I mean, Morgan, he needs Chuck, and he can't grow up. Chuck's sitting there pretending like he's trying to grow up, but he's really just stressing out about his spy life. So what does he do? He takes out his frustrations on Morgan by talking to him about not growing up. Now, obviously, Morgan's not going to take this the right way because he's Morgan. He doesn't take stuff like this the right way. And if it's just sprung on you, who would take it the right way? I mean, it's not like Chuck was like, hey, can we talk about maybe some maturity levels he's discussing? He catches Morgan trying to film Whale Tale and just goes off on him. Just starts yelling at him. So, I mean, it definitely could have been better handled. But, I mean, you wouldn't have half as much drama that the TV show wanted if there was better setup. So obviously they had to do it like this. But I mean, that's what happened. Chuck blew up in his face, and Morgan ran off because he couldn't accept it that his best friend, his basically brother, since they were little kids, was telling him he's immature and childish and he needs to grow up. Basically talking down to him as if he's better. And I think Morgan was like, hey, I guess he is better, and started pouting and moping. So he freaked out and he ran off. Not really ran off, but I mean, he was obviously very upset that Chuck blew up at him, and he walked off, like most of us would have done, as I said. So I mean, it's both. Like I said, it's Chuck overstepping a line, but he's not overstepping it by much. Because what he's saying is right, but he approached it in a way that's a terrible approach. So obviously, what does Morgan do? He goes to talk to Ellie about Chuck. And what does Ellie do? She wants nothing to do with it. So who's left to help? Awesome. Captain Awesome. That's who. And what does Captain Awesome assume? That he needs to grow up? He needs to be dressed better. Not that he needs to mature, but he just needs to dress better. So now we have a montage of Captain Awesome dressing Morgan up and teaching him how to be a fancier. And if you can't see me right now, but I am holding my pinky up because when you say the word fancy, you have to hold your pinky up. Iggy Azalea did not follow this rule. It's disappointing. That song could have been so much bigger than the huge, huge hit it already is if she had just held her pinky up. But I digress. Anyway, so we have this montage of Morgan tucking in his pants, slicking back his hair, and then showing up at the Buy More on Halloween, basically looking like a mini Gordon Gekko from Wall Street. And they mentioned that in the TV show, and as soon as he walked in, before he said that, I was like, that's Gordon Gekko, and they agreed, and I was like, me and the show are on the same page, because that's how I feel. I'm on the same page as Chuck. We're tight. I get it. It gets me. But anyway, so we have Morgan showing up, dressed as mini Gordon Gekko, and what happens? Chuck doesn't show up for his assistant manager interview because he's out to save the world. And what does Morgan do? Not only does he forgive Chuck in the moment, he doesn't formally go, hey Chuck, I forgive you for being kind of an ass to me. He does what any good friend, best friend would do, or brother, basically. And he sticks up for Chuck. He goes in there and takes the interview for him by telling the interviewer all about Chuck and how awesome he is. Now, if that's not a great friend, I don't know what is. That's like loyal. That's loyalty to a T. Like, that's some Lassie stuff right there. That's like saving Timmy from a well right there. Chuck is in the well, trying to get that assistant manager's job, and Morgan tries to help him out. Morgan as Lassie tries to help him out. Yes, he does fail. He does fail. So Timmy does technically stay trapped in the well, but it's a terrible analogy, I know. And you know what? I'm not cutting this out. I stick by my analogy. I think it's right. So yeah, Timmy's still stuck at the bottom of the well, but Lassie tried. I mean, how is a dog supposed to work a well? How that doesn't work. But anyway, so he tries to help. He really tried, and that, I mean, he gives it his best effort, and that's why Morgan is easily Chuck's best friend, and he's basically a brother to Chuck. He's a character that you fall in love with almost immediately because of how compassionate he is towards the people he cares for. And obviously that's the same thing Chuck is. They're like mirrors of each other in that aspect, which I think helps the characters. So I mean, if you're looking for a good character, Morgan's up there. He's fantastic. And guys, I mean, that covers the major topics I wanted to talk about. I was gonna delve into Laszlo, but I mean, like I said, he's just like I guess I could talk about how what happened to him could happen to Chuck at any moment. That's the scary part for Chuck, is that he could just at any moment be sent to a government facility underground for the rest of his life, and he couldn't do anything about it. At any moment that could happen. So I mean, yeah, that's pretty scary for him. And so I mean, that's pretty much all you can say from Laszlo's perspective. He's just a one character baddie who didn't really do much. Didn't watch the Bond films, so I'm not a big fan of him. Now, if you haven't watched all the Bond films, we can still be friends, but you gotta like Chuck too. Laszlo didn't like Chuck. Anyway, so I mean, there's not much to say on Laszlo's front other than the fact that what happened to him could happen to Chuck at any moment. And that's why Chuck is scared in this episode, is because he learns that that could happen to him anytime. They could just whisk him underground at any moment. But now I think that covers all the topics I wanted to cover about the Sandworm. I even discussed the Sandworm. I guess we have Chuck and Sarah reconciling at the end too. So there's that. That's a nice gesture. The distrust goes back out and trust comes back in. And they get a real picture together, which is nice. Instead of that fake Comic-Con picture, they get a real picture together, which is nice. And Chuck and Morgan make up, obviously, because they're best friends forever. And yeah, that covers all the topics that I wanted to discuss for this episode. So once again, guys, thank you for doubling the viewership of this podcast. You guys are insanely awesome. I would not be here without you guys. Seriously, like, this is episode 6, and I'm still around. I didn't think I'd make it past episode 2. I didn't think I would have any views for this podcast. I didn't think I'd have any views. And you guys have given me hundreds of views, which is hundreds more than I thought there would be. So thank you guys. And like I said, because of your generosity of taking 20 to 30 something, the first episode was 40 minutes, so anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about me talk about my favorite show, thank you. You guys sincerely are the best, and there's no replacing you guys. So like I said, this podcast should be up on the 12th of September. Then I will have the next episode of Chuck, which like I said, I think it's Chuck versus the Truth. I'm going to look that up real quick for you guys, because I want to I want to give you guys the real answer and not like the fake answer. So I'm gonna go look it up real quick, but I'm almost fairly certain it's Chuck versus the Truth. So here we go, guys. The moment of truth. Dun, dun, dun. Nope, sorry, I was wrong the whole time. I very much apologize. It's Chuck versus the Alma Mater, which is also a good episode. Chuck versus the Alma Mater will go up Sunday or Monday, just depending on when I can get it up, when I can record it and get it up. But you guys are getting 2 episodes this week because you guys are the bomb diggity. And maybe if I'm not busy, maybe if I don't get busy, I'll try and put out 2 episodes a week for you guys. You guys, like I said, you doubled the viewership in like 5 days. It's freaking incredible, guys. Like I said, extremely I'm extremely gracious to you guys. Like I said, without you guys, I wouldn't be here. NerfHerder Entertainment wouldn't be here. So, once again, guys, thanks for listening. Keep watching Chuck. Salute the Bimorian flag, and follow the podcast on Twitter at ChuckRewatch33, capital C and Chuck. Also follow NerfHerder HQ, capital N, capital H, capital HQ. We're going to post some stuff on there. Like I said, we got some projects coming up through NerfHerder Entertainment that we'd like to share with you guys. But this podcast is our first official project under the company of NerfHerder Entertainment. So, thank you guys for making it a success so far. I would call it a success. Hundreds of downloads. That's a huge success for us. Like I said, I didn't expect any viewers. So, you guys made this a successful podcast so far. And you guys are the best. Thank you, and we will see you in a few days for Chuck versus the Alma Mater. Oh, and also, in addition to following the Intersect Project podcast on Twitter, NerfHerder HQ on Twitter, go follow Chuckaholics on Twitter. Go check out the blog. We got a lot of cool stuff over there. Live chats every Friday. That's fun. And also check out Chara9's blog. She writes some fan fiction for Chuck. It's pretty good stuff. So go check that out. I wanted to plug her blog too, along with Chuckaholics and this podcast. So, like I said, go give that blog a look at. Thank you.